You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Our guest today is Mark Hay. Mark Hay is a lover of nature and the founder, along with his wife Amy, of Coast Live Oak School in Southern California, where they teach not only survival skills, but also native and ancestral skills to allow people of all ages to deepen their connection with their environment and live in accord with nature.
Well, good evening, guys.
Hey, hey. All right.
Welcome all of us to the Authenticity Show. Really excited about tonight.
Yeah. This is going to be an interesting one, Carlos. It's going to be a very interesting one.
It is.
You and I love nature, and I think we might have somebody
do.
across from us who might actually love it even more than we do.
Maybe.
There could be evidence for this tonight.
Indeed.
So tonight we have Mark Hay. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark Hay.
Yes. I've never heard that before.
I'm sure you never have.
Hey, what do you say?
But I
you
have,
ever heard
I
that
have
one?
pun Tourette's, and it's going to happen all night probably.
Pun Tourette's. I like that.
I do.
That's good. That's good. So Mark, your reputation has preceded you in my experience, because I've been hearing about the survival skills camps that all of our producers' children have attended that you run. And it was fascinating to me when I first heard about it. So maybe we could start with what that is. What is it exactly that you do?
Well, the camps that Zoe and Emmett have done are basically for 7 to 14-year-olds, and we do them at local parks, so like Irvine Park, San Diego Oaks, pretty close by. And the real sort of main motivation is just to get the kids outside and doing stuff with their hands, which is sort of, for a lot of kids, isn't really things that they do that much anymore. And for some kids it is. It depends on the kid, But a lot of kids now are playing video games and staying inside a lot. And for them to just be able to go outside and have fun and make things with their hands, we make tools, we make bows and arrows and other kinds of tools. It's just a different way of having fun,
Wow.
Ancient skills building.
Yeah, that's what we're teaching, because we're teaching, basically we do primitive skills, which is survival skills with no metal tools, no modern tools. But we make it accessible to the kids. Like one of the first things we do is we make knives out of rocks, which is very fun. It's very simple. You just crack rocks against other rocks and flakes come off, and you use the flakes as a knife, and it's like an explosion. It's incredibly satisfying.
Wow.
Yeah, it
Wow.
sounds like it. It almost sounds like it should appeal to some deep genetic drive that us humans have. That you're really tapping into something. That's what I feel.
Because the rock blows up and the sharp thing flies off, and then there's your tool.
Wow.
So it's
we
call it creation by destruction.
Oh, that's great. Creation by destruction. Wow. Yeah. So what are some other skills that you teach these kids to do?
We do a lot of just stuff around basic needs, which is all humans basically have the needs of shelter, water, fire, and food. And so we just use that as our outline. And so the first thing we do, kids make a shelter, and they can get as creative as they want with it.
Okay.
The 7-year-olds have a big imagination, and they kind of try things and try to build towers and tree houses and all kinds of other stuff.
Wow.
The older kids might have seen movies or videos or documentaries. They kind of get a little bit more focused on no, that doesn't work. This kind of thing works. And they get a little bit more practical, but everybody just kind of goes with their imagination. And so making shelter is pretty fundamental skill in terms of living outside, because it's not really survival, it's living, and then from there, water is the second priority in terms of if you're going to live outside, your water would be your second priority after shelter. So we just walk and look for water, and that's fun because you see a lot of things on the way. And then making fire is pretty fundamental skill, and sort of after finding water, you make fire. fire gives us a lot of different things. Allows us to boil water, allows us to cook food, allows us to make tools, gives us light, gives us heat, gives us, so many other things. And then food, in that order: shelter, water, fire, food. Food is actually the last priority because you can go the longest without it. You can go for about 3 weeks without food. You can really go for only about 3 days without water. So the food is something, the way that we do food is by teaching the kids how to make tools. Like a bow and arrow is basically a food getting tool.
Yeah.
So we teach the kids how to make bows and arrows with no modern tools, just super simple. We use Mexican fan palm branches, which are the palm trees, the ubiquitous Southern California palm trees are Mexican fan palms. We make the bows with those. And then the arrows is a plant that's very common around here that grows in the river washes and stuff. That's just a straight, nice, hard, straight growing plant. And the kids sometimes are able to cut it with their own knives. And
Wow, they're
harvest it
rock
from
knives
scratch.
that they've made. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Shelter, water, fire, food, in that order.
Yeah.
That's cool that there's an order and structure to it, kind of like Maslow's needs in nature.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
too. Yeah, yeah. Well, this is an interesting idea, I guess. It makes me sort of feel like if I was having to make those things for myself or for my own family and friends out in nature, I would have so much more appreciation and so much more gratitude for what I have. But, not often do we wake up every morning and go, oh, I have this amazing shelter. Oh, I have fire just coming out of sockets in the walls. It's an interesting thought. Does your work cause you to have, more awareness of those kinds of appreciations? What's that
Definitely.
like? Yeah.
And that's a little bit of sort of like the secret goal for the kids is that they go home and they're like, wow, like I really have it pretty good. Like my house is already built. And like you said, fire's coming out of the wall. We don't really break it down for them too much and make it all, try to intellectualize it too much. But I think just by doing it, the kids realize like, wow, like I don't have to go look for water and make fire by hand and go forage for food every day. Even though that might be fun, it's already here for me. It's already provided.
Yeah.
But it's like it's suggested rather than instructed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when the kids experience something like firsthand and then they project in their own imagination, wow, what would it really be like? Like if I really had to live out here for a week, they kind of go, wow, that would be hard. But then they also say, well, it's learnable. People did it. Our ancestors, all of our ancestors at some point in the past did that, and so it just puts things in perspective for them,
Yeah.
But then personally, I mean, like the first time that I ever went out for like a week and just lived off the land for a week, I did a class up in Washington where we basically had a backpack, a water bottle, and a knife. That's it. Wow. We had our clothes on our back,
Okay.
And so we were living off the land for a week just with those things. We were literally following elk trails just up and down these hills in the wilderness areas, kind of on the eastern side of the Cascades, which is a little bit drier in the state of Washington. And it was just amazing because it was like you tune into all of these things that you don't really tune into. And the real sort of deep realization that I had is that when you're living like that, life is very creative because you're making decisions that are creating your reality, whereas in our, not to be negative or anything, but in our reality, everything's sort of built already and the roads are sort of already where they are. And, everything is sort of mapped out already.
It's sort of already been created for us.
Yeah.
We're not really participating in that.
And you can break out of that. You can make your own house. I mean, we have the freedom to break out of that. It's not like we're slaves or anything, but when you're in the wild and when you're building your shelter every night to sleep in and when you're going to look for water and you're cooking your own food and cooking your own meals and looking for food and connecting to the people that you're with on a very intimate level because you have to. There's a lot of creativity that occurs in that situation, from on all levels, I mean, the conversations are amazing because you're sitting and you're getting to know these people who at the beginning of the week, because it's a week-long experience, are basically perfect strangers. And that by the end of the week, you're bonded with them because you've gone through so much. And, so all of that really is an amazing experience. For kids, it's amazing. For adults, it's amazing because for adults, going out, being out with people, going through all that
Yeah.
is very strong, you know.
Yeah, wow. You know, I'm glad you said just moments ago that we can break out of that. Because I suspect a lot of people don't realize that they can break out of it and that they can go and do those kinds of experiences and learn those kinds of skills. But you're somebody who's done that. You know, that's amazing. I love that.
And I think that's something that sort of has come into my life more strongly after learning these skills and doing these things and tapping into that world, is that like you realize that you can make your reality, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it on a physical way. You can say, I want my house to be like this, or, you know, I want to sleep in a teepee, or I want to build a shelter the next time I go camping and sleep in that shelter instead of sleeping in my tent. But then it also goes to like a more subtle level of like, I can construct the reality that I want, the relationships, the interactions that I have, you know, because every interaction matters, you know, every interaction builds to something, right? You know? So
I love the clarity that you seem to have achieved through doing what you love. And I love that what you're expressing is a philosophy that's practical, you know, that it's kind of been born out of your experiences, and it really feels like you're sharing your life philosophy with us, and it's a practical one. You know, it's something that you've witnessed in your life, and I like that. I appreciate that. I can sense the possibility for an authenticity show field trip, week-long survival skills training based on just this conversation.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't you love that?
Gosh.
Awesome.
You know, I think, you know, so here on our show, you know, we use this word authentic all the time. And I cannot imagine having an authentic life without some kind of significant connection to nature. I just don't see how I could have an authentic life without that.
Yeah, no way.
You know, and I don't feel like I get enough of it. But it's certainly a longing. Yeah, it's amazing. Carlos, I'd like to point out that our wonderful guest here is actually wearing moccasins that he made himself.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about your hat. I see a hat that looks like it's made of similar leather. Did you make this hat too?
No,
or is
no.
It's just an awesome hat that somebody else made. Yeah, okay.
Matches
I
the
like
shoes.
It totally matches the shoes. Yeah.
Irish sheep herder.
Oh, it is. Yeah, very much like that. Yeah.
This is just,
Yeah.
it's been sitting around. My hair's messy. If
hair.
you're showing up for a radio interview, you have to look good, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, when you cut your hair with a stone knife, you know, I mean, yeah. Do you make stone scissors to cut? Yeah.
For our psychic listeners out there.
Oh man, that's great.
But those shoes look, you know, awfully similar to some of the shoes that, you know, Satch and I wore back when we first started doing the minimalist running.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like,
in fact, I want a pair of what you have. Yeah.
Yeah, those are awesome.
Very
Amazing.
comfortable.
Maybe we'll take a class with you in how to make those, and then that could be something that we could do again.
Yeah, definitely. These are made from hand-tanned deer skin, and it's a long process. It's very satisfying because you're basically taking like the skin of the deer, like fresh off the deer, scraping the hair off, scraping the flesh off, and you're basically transforming it into not commercial tanned leather, which is very stiff and hard, but something that is extremely soft and supple. And like I just wash these. You can wash it with soap and water, and it softens right up again.
No way.
It's amazing for running because it just goes on like it's like wearing a sock basically, but it's tough, durable.
They make me want to go running right now.
Yeah, right.
When I see those. Yeah.
It's definitely the closest.
Screw the show. Let's
thing
go running.
barefooted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is, I mean, I put like a thin little layer of plastic on the bottom just for durability.
Sure.
But it's without the plastic.
That was off a plastic
it
tree?
Feels. We're always like mixing modern, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Man, plastic is like a
it's-
miracle material, you know.
Yeah, it is.
And the fact that it's only like been around for 60 years.
And you can be out in the middle of nowhere. Oh my God, there's a piece of plastic here.
Right.
That jerk. I guess I'll use it to make shoes.
Still there.
Yeah. I had heard on a survival show that the Native Americans that lived out in the desert used to have to often change their moccasins like every few days. So when a piece of plastic can make them last a long time, that is quite miraculous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, because you appreciate the modern stuff, and you know, like plastic is terrible for the environment, but if you save something and use it till its maximum life use, hopefully,
Yeah,
that's
you're
pretty good.
repurposing it, and at least making it for good use. I mean, the huarache, in Mexico, and the copper, the Tarahumara Indians that use, they use bits of tire.
Yeah.
Whatever they can find. Toughen up the
the
soul.
tires that have been thrown out as trash, they just cut it off, and
it's no good for a truck, but it's good for my feet.
Yeah. Smart. It's just smart living. So, do you remember a time when you fell in love with nature?
Yes. It was definitely when I was a kid, and I think the ocean was sort of like my first love, because I like being in the ocean and like body surfing or whatever, riding waves, like better than anything else by far. I mean, there'd be times where I'd be body surfing for like 6 hours straight, and you just forget that you're a human. You feel like a seal.
Right.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
And then when you get out, you sort of think about it later, and you're like, wow, that was just like, I was like not in human brain. I was in like seal brain. You know?
Yeah.
So that was sort of the way that I sort of experienced it. And, I mean, but then, the color of the blue sky sometimes like is just, there's the color of blue that the sky gets.
Yeah.
That just cannot be recreated by.
Wow. So it sounds like you've developed a lot of awareness.
I think just being outside a lot, sometimes people say it kind of like goes to your head a little bit, but I don't think it does. But you experience so much beauty that it sort of overwhelms you.
Did you have models for that as a kid, or is this something that you did uniquely in your family? Like, in other
That's a good question.
Did your parents do it, or how'd you?
I mean, my mom and dad definitely liked to be outside, and they definitely encouraged us to be outside, which I think for our generation was sort of something that everybody did. You played outside. I mean, did you guys play outside?
Oh yeah, we climbed trees.
We still played
absolutely.
outside. I remember walking home from school and we said, "Do you want to go the regular way or do you want to take the ninja way?"
Yeah, exactly.
And we took the ninja way as often as possible.
Same phrase.
Yeah. We still use that technical terminology, ninja.
Ninja.
In different
it
ways.
Is a
It's an
technical term
adjective.
for
It's a
total
verb.
way.
It is.
Yeah,
It
it's a
is.
total
Very
way.
descriptive.
Yeah. So definitely playing outside to me was just fundamental, awesome growing up, and like here, you guys grew up in Southern California.
Oh yeah. Orange County.
I mean, you can play outside all year. You can play outside all year in Maine, but you're going to be playing in the snow. It's going to be kind of cold. But here, you can play outside till 9 o'clock at night every single day of the year.
Yeah.
And you can climb
If your parents
trees
let
every
you.
single day of the year. You can go barefoot the whole, if your parents let you, you can go barefoot the entire year,
Yeah.
And I think that just, is a special thing what I've observed as a teacher, what I've observed over the years interacting with young people is young people aren't doing that as much.
I tend to use a real simple philosophy, which is if I have a choice between inside and outside, try to choose outside because it'll eventually be better. So every time I go to a restaurant, I'm like, oh, would you like to sit inside or outside? How about outside? Or little choices like that. If I get a drink and say, well, maybe I could go outside and finish my drink, and it just always makes it a little nicer for me.
And then you can have the ninja cocktail.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you say ninja cocktail?
The ninja cocktail. It's yet to be invented.
That's right.
Oh yeah. Well, hey,
It's so good you don't even know you had it.
This is a reality that we could actually shape.
Well played, ninjas. Well played. Yeah. Was there actually? Were there people that weren't in your family that inspired you along the way as a child, a teenager, an adult, that kind of became markers for you in a sense of like, wow, that's inspiring. That's cool. I kind of want to gravitate towards that in my own choices. Like, obviously you made choices. You could have decided to just have a regular 9-to-5 job and do those kinds of things, but you kind of ended up being this teacher of outdoor awareness skills and all that. What was the process that took you there?
That's a good question. My parents definitely were a big influence because they really, I feel like genuinely wanted me and my brothers, I have 2 younger brothers, to really do the thing that we love to do. My wife and I don't have kids, but we interact with parents. We interact with kids a lot. Parents have a hard job because you're just making these decisions and they're going to affect that child for the rest of their life. And, it's easy for the child to be like, you didn't blah, 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 complain.
You're ruining my life.
So my parents definitely were like there to sort of allow the process to happen,
Encourage and sort of leave you to your own devices, but with love, that kind of thing.
And then I know you asked about people outside my family.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, this is what I say sometimes as a short version is, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an Indian. I know that's not necessarily politically correct now, but
hey, I know what you mean.
Native American, Native person. The idea of that was always in my mind.
Right.
Not as like a good or bad, cowboys and Indians thing, but as like, wow, how awesome would it be?
You resonated with it.
Live off the land all the time. And I didn't really feel like I needed a TV, and I didn't really feel like I needed a car, and I didn't really feel like I needed the stuff that we have in our modern life, And then learning about people who had actually done that or gone for periods of time doing that, like Tom Brown Jr. I don't know if you guys heard of him.
I was going to ask you about him later.
Sure. Yeah. He's like very intense person, and I've taken a couple tracker school classes. And he learned from a guy named Stalking Wolf, who was a native Apache person who was a master of living off the land and pretty much lived off the land his entire life.
Right.
Tom Brown learned from him from the age of 7 to 17, which is very formative years, And just hearing, like, there's a woman named Lynx Vilden. She does these immersion classes. She does them all over the world. And she basically creates these experiences from a 1-week experience like the one that I described in Washington, where we're sort of living off the land, and it's sort of a beginner experience. And if you've never really done any like hardcore wilderness survival, you can kind of do a week, and with good guidance from good teachers, you can have a great time and feel good about yourself. Till she does ones that are like a month and 3 months long.
Wow.
And she's like living, she's alive and she's doing it right now. You can sign up for one of her classes. She does classes in France. She does classes in Sweden. She does this class in France where you basically do like a horse trek for a week through all of the old areas, like where all the cave paintings and all the ancient habitations of,
Whoa, that'd be amazing.
All the ancient people.
Dream come true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she wears like full, she wears full on skins and then when she's not doing those classes working, she still lives in Washington, Eastern Washington, lives off the land.
Is she a native of the U.S. or Norway or Sweden?
She's a native of the U.S. and she actually took Tom Brown's classes, and that's sort of what got her started, I guess. And so she's been doing the types of classes that she does now. She's been doing those for about 20 years.
And her name's Lynx Vilden.
Lynx Vilden.
Vilden.
Yeah. And she's incredible. And there's people like that aren't necessarily people that I've met, but just now with the internet, you just can have access to so many people's stories. She hasn't written any books or anything, but she's somebody that is really just currently like, whoa, just like blows your mind kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's super simple. She's not doing something that's fireworks and extravagant. She's just doing something that's really simple, basic, but like following that path of, ancient knowledge and skills.
That's so cool. I've yet to take Tom Brown's basic classes, the philosophy and then the skills class that he does. I haven't done either of them, but I've had a lot of students of, martial arts students of mine that have taken his classes up to the, scout levels and things like that. Yeah. And I've also taken kind of like their summation, like we would go up for, 5-6 days up into the Benneville Pines and Big Bear, and then they would kind of relate what they learned over the week to us, and we would practice. So it was kind of like secondhand in a way. But I was really fascinated with Tom Brown in high school and after high school, reading his books and stuff. It's just so fascinating, the stories about grandfather and, his sort of friend, brother, best friend slash, blood brother, Rick or whatever. Inspiring.
Yeah.
And intriguing, just makes me light up thinking about what's possible.
Yeah, he really, in person, he's a little almost like crazy.
I've heard that.
Is the sort of impression, but then
like hyper intense.
Yeah, he just like wants you to be motivated.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really care. This is the interpretation that I have of him. He doesn't really care if you think that he's being intense.
Right.
He just wants you to remember and then go home and do it, which is like pretty awesome because he doesn't really hold back. He's not like, well, the sensible person would do this. He just like is like, go home and do this because nobody's going to do it for you. Like, you only got one life, go for it, and he gives you that sort of permission to do that.
That's so cool.
Well, and not everybody does, because they're like, well, Tom Brown's crazy, and I don't know. He said this or that. He's not that crazy, but he's lived off the land for long periods of time, and he has a different perspective on life, and so he comes off as very intense and very, he's emphatic sometimes.
He's all in.
Yeah, he is totally all in.
He's totally all in.
Yeah.
But I've also heard some really interesting things about, obviously, if you read the books, you hear all about interesting perceptions and abilities that he has. Mm-hmm. But then to have it verified from people who've gone to the classes who can tell you, you know what, he could tell what people more or less ate, how much they ate and drank that day, and based on their footprint, or, tracking them on solid rock, seeing footprints. And these are things that defy most people's conception of what's possible. They think, oh, come on, that's BS. Yeah. Some kind of trick involved there. But no, this is just something he can do. Our martial art teacher can do things as a 80-year-old, 81-year-old that doesn't look real, doesn't, it defies most people's conception of what's possible with regard to physics. They think, oh, you can't possibly get someone to fly off of you like that.
Yeah, they must be faking.
Yeah, he's not even leaning into it. He's not even exerting much,
Yeah.
So that doesn't seem rational.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you've seen some of that stuff too, just by being around him and having a keen eye like you do from being out in nature so much.
Yeah, and he definitely, like, there's some things that are unbelievable, but then you realize, like with the tracking especially, like tracking is a weird sort of art because we do tracking all the time. It's called reading.
Yeah. Pattern recognition.
Reading is tracking.
Yeah.
And we have created letters that we understand as having meaning, But this is an analogy that I give to people, I give to parents sometimes, is like, all of us in this room could recognize every single person's handwriting that we know.
That's true.
But if you asked, if I asked you, Carlos, how do you know that that's Oliver's handwriting?
It's hard to explain.
Be able to explain.
You're right. It's really hard to explain.
And to me, it sort of came down to being that simple. Is like Tom Brown has seen so many.
That's a good example.
Letters. Tracks, letters written by so many different animals. Mm-hmm. And the key is that he's had the direct experience. And this is another thing that we are sort of trying to do with our classes, is to give the kids direct experiences, not direct experiences that are dangerous or harmful, but give them the direct experience. Actually have them watch a snake move across sand. When you actually watch a snake move across sand, you realize why it's making the print that it's making, because and you see it directly. And I think Tom Brown, because of just sitting in the woods, spending so much time, has seen pregnant deer step into mud, actually saw the deer, and then walked up and looked at the track later and was like, oh, that's what a pregnant deer looks like in October, or, in whatever time of the year, in whatever substrate, whatever mud or conditions that they stepped in. And when you break it down to that level, you realize, oh, these are just experiences that I haven't had.
Right.
They're experiences that Tom Brown has had. That's the difference.
Well, and to kind of climb onto that boat there, that's the experiences that he has had, but then there's also the generations of experiences that he's taken, on trust, on word. So it's like, that's why we get herbal knowledge in a sense because we listen to what our elders or our teachers told us and memorize those things. And it's like we're standing on the shoulders of those giants. And you remember in the books, he was talking about how the different Apache tribes had various levels of track register memory, like the different positions in the track and different kinds of qualities of the track, what they called registers, right? And some of them had like 2,000 or 3,000, but his tradition, what was it, like 5 or 9,000? It was, they were like up at the top. And so his, you know, Apache Indians were known for being such great trackers, but then his particular teacher was from a lineage of Apache that had this incredible number of track registers that they had memorized.
Exactly. And
wow.
when he breaks it down at the class, it's the way that they give each of the registers a name is by terms in landscape.
Oh.
So it's like a crest fall and a crest crumble, and those are landscape terminologies. Now, obviously, this is being translated from like Lip on Apache to English, but the names for them are from experience, from looking at landscape, because of course there's macro tracks and there's micro tracks, you know, and water makes tracks on the landscape, and the same way that a deer makes tracks on the landscape. And as I contemplated Tom Brown and I was taking his classes, I took the advanced tracking and awareness class, which was awesome. And I did it in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, where he'd learned. And he had us like stare at a deer track for like 4 hours and sketch it, and then sketch it again, and then sketch it again, and sketch it again. And your eyes are like hurting by the end of the 4 hours. And he's like pacing back and forth, like past this, because he basically found a line of like 40 deer tracks in a row and had groups of like 4 or 5 people sketching on each one. And he was walking up and down this line of these tracks, just like, you know, after like 2 hours, he's like, this is nothing. Grandfather made me sit and stare at tracks for like 12 hours. Your eyes aren't getting sore. Your knees aren't getting sore. Just keep sketching, you know, like he would just be all, you know,
drill sergeant.
He's playing a role. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing. He's playing a role.
He's old school.
And some people, you know, sort of cringe and fan themselves. Oh, gosh, he's trying to hurt our feelings, you know. But it's like most everybody's like, kind of chuckles, and they're like, yep, this is what I signed up for, right?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Oh, that's great.
And you're staring at a track for 4 hours, and then you lift your head up and you're like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? And all of a sudden you just see tracks everywhere, you know, because everywhere it is a track. Like the way that a tree grows different from another tree, you start to see like the tracks of the wind, you know, and then you start to see, and it's not magic. It's your eyes. It's the way that you see, and you're training yourself to just see more detail. And then, of course, what Tom Brown learned from grandfather was how to talk about the details, how to say, this is a crest crumble, this is a crest, whatever, how to break those things down so that you can speak to another person about it, you know, and not just say, oh, well, I know because of this, but to actually be able to articulate, oh, this is why this is how I know that that's a pregnant, you know, female deer, is because of this kind of, you know, crest fall or crest crumble on the left side of this and that, you know. So it's fascinating.
That's amazing. The way you're describing this makes me think of any trade. Any serious discipline that anybody does,
right.
You know, I'm thinking of healthcare right now. You know, you learn some kind of healthcare discipline, and you learn anatomy, and you learn about the skin, and then you learn about joints and muscles and diseases and signs and symptoms. And after a while, you can see an old lady walking through, you know, the coffee shop, and you go, oh yeah, she had a stroke, left side of the brain caused this pattern, that pattern, and you see all these things that an untrained person wouldn't see. But the only reason you can see it is because you've been taught to pay attention for a really long time.
Right. Yeah.
And it's really very practical, and there really isn't anything magical about it, but it does seem magical, doesn't it?
It does seem magical.
Right.
And like people like for many years have said is like, you know, magic is sort of science that is not understood by
absolutely. Yeah.
people.
You know, I had a teacher of mine, an acupuncture teacher of mine, who taught me how to tell the sex of the baby by taking the patient's pulse. And I was amazed at how systematic it was. And it wasn't simple at all. He was saying, okay, if this position, there's these 3 positions that your fingers are on. There's 3 positions on each wrist, and there's the superficial, the middle, and the deep. And so there's a lot of positions. Then you compare the first position on this side to the last position on that side, and then compare it to the opposite side in the front. And if this one's stronger than that one, then it's a 70% chance that it's a boy. If this one is also stronger than that one, then it's 99% chance it's a boy. But you can't tell unless it's this far into the pregnancy. And there's all these little details, right? And I've just had fun ever since feeling people's pulses and going, boy, girl. I think this is a girl, but I can only say 70% right now. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then it's almost always correct. And somebody might say, you can't feel somebody's wrist pulse and tell if it's a boy or a girl. That's silly, right? You go, oh, yeah? I do it all the time. That's awesome. It just has somebody pointed it out to me. I wouldn't have found it on my own, but
and it's tuning you into the subtlety of a pulse, because like most people aren't sitting there going, oh, well, I have like these different qualities of pulse in my wrist. We're just, oh, pulse, I feel it. Okay. But when you start tuning into all the subtleties, then you're like, you're getting a lot more information, right?
Yeah, I suppose that really opens your mind to the question, what else is possible? If this is possible, then what else is possible?
Exactly.
Because, we're on the same track, Satch, talking about, I was just going to say more or less the same thing, that there are different disciplines that some people would hear about and just be bored stiff and would never have the patience or even the curiosity to want to know all the things that would be required for you to get the skill of knowing some kind of subtle thing like that would appear like you were psychic. It would appear like you're able to have predictive ability or, some kind of, psychic sense of some kind, when in fact it's very subtle awareness. It's skill that's been developed. I mean, we know about the things that we've learned to feel through touch in martial arts. By the moment I feel someone's arm, there's a certain level of skill I've developed through that practice. I can tell where someone's balance is in that moment, whether my eyes were open or closed. Doesn't matter. Because it's not based on what I look at. It's based on what I feel in my body. And that's a feedback loop. I'm getting feedback. And this stuff that you're talking about, when you're spending that much time, it's meditation. Your mind is singular and absorbed fully into what it is you're experiencing, and you're not thinking about other things. You're just fully taking in what it is you're observing. And there's a certain kind of a learning that cannot be replaced. You can't, go past go and skip, or what am I saying? Skip
go,
pass go, not collect $200. Whatever. You've got to do the work. You've got to put in the time. You've got to be on your belly for 12 hours or whatever, and have your eyes hurt before you can get that.
But they're not hurting.
No,
and neither are your knees.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really important to remember.
You're listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Up next, Carlos and Satch continue their conversation with Mark Hay about nature, including stories about encounters in nature, advice about getting deeper into nature, and nature as a church. Stay tuned.
I meet people that don't like to go outside, that don't like to go camping. Their idea of a vacation is a fine hotel by the pool with room service and these kinds of things. And for me, I couldn't imagine a better vacation than being out in nature, So maybe, it would be fun to give some pointers. How would somebody who's not feeling very connected to nature start? What are some tips?
If you have kids, just follow your kids around.
That is beautiful.
Because they will do funny stuff. And, of course, you're probably following around anyway because you don't want them to eat a snail or, do something dangerous.
I did that when I
right?
was like 2.
Fall into
Right.
the poison ivy.
Yeah.
But, kids are pretty
Curious.
they're just going and they'll stay in one place for like 2 hours and just playing in the dirt, running these experiments, making these observations on an intuitive level by repeating the same thing over and over again. And sometimes, the adult brain says, well, they're just doing the same thing over and over again, but they're it's like they're running an experiment.
That's good. I remember being a child and noticing the finest of details and things. And then as an adult, I look and go, gosh, how long have I had that pen and never even realized what it said on the side of the pen? Right. But as a kid, I would have known exactly what it said on the side of the pen because you pay attention to those kinds of things. You
stared at it. I mean, some people, I would have stared at it, and like really like taken it in and then flipped it over and been like, where did we even get, why are we writing on the sides of pins? You just go into all that in your mind.
Right.
I would have been imagining it was a spaceship flying around.
Yeah. Right.
Because you go into that imaginative mind, and it's so great because it's like it opens up more possibilities. Like, and even if they're not real possibilities, you're opening up these possibilities, and your mind is like wide open. And so following kids around, and a lot of people, they say they don't really like nature, but they kind of do. Like they like a certain kind. Like golf courses. I don't like golf courses, but the golf
have
courses,
a beauty. Yeah.
Like if you go to Scotland or whatever, I've seen pictures of golf courses in Scotland that are actual naturally occurring places that look just like the perfect golf course. And it's just because they're newly grazed grasslands that are right next to the ocean where the grass only gets this tall because it's growing in sand. And the sheep come and they graze it and they mow it all down. And then you go and you play golf on it, and you're like, wow, that looks like a perfect golf course. And it's just sheep grazing next to the ocean, which is where golf was invented, right? So it's like, I don't know. People sometimes say they claim they don't like nature, but I don't know.
It seems like the stumbling blocks that I hear about most are either worried about bugs,
right,
not being able to shower, and not being comfortable when they sleep,
or
being cold.
Yeah,
those seem like to be the major, the head turns.
right. And going potty outside really
that too.
That's a big one.
That would be a sixth
going potty
one for
outside.
Sure. Yeah,
and those can be overcome. Those are skills. Like building a comfortable bed is a skill. That's shelter building. That's the first priority, right? Mm-hmm. If you can build yourself a comfortable bed, then you have ninja level 1. And then go into the bathroom outside, like in our classes. I teach class with my wife. She takes the girls to the bathroom. I take the boys to the bathroom. Sometimes finding like a private place to go to the bathroom in the woods is a little tricky. But if you kind of know the area and you kind of, we're walking down the trail and we're kind of always like scoping out to find the spot where it might be a good bathroom spot in case one of the kids has to go to the bathroom. And it's just a skill that you learn just like anything else. Just like going to the bathroom in a house, It's like everybody knows where the bathroom is in the house. Right?
Yeah, that's
same thing in nature.
Yeah, we call it potty training.
Right, exactly.
You have to train to know how to do it. Wow.
So, the barriers are approachable.
Yeah.
Okay. But good. I think a lot of people have fear. Fear is always there.
Fear is the mind killer.
Yeah. Yeah, fear.
It's a Sagittarian thing.
So it sounds like your deep love of nature, has pulled you into living your life in nature and having a career, that's based upon nature. Is outside sort of your church, your mosque? What is your relationship, to nature that's outside of yourself?
It's funny that you say mosque because I got to go to Egypt when I was a kid, when I was in 1984, when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And I got to go into this very old mosque. And the first thing that I thought when I stepped into that mosque is, this feels like a forest. So.
Wow.
It is it is my mosque. It is my church.
Those domed ceilings are just like the dome of the sky.
Yeah,
you know,
because they have these arches, that are holding up this like stone, and then they have these pillars that go up and just like arc up like this, and they look like
Like a sacred geometry
situation
they
there. Fully go in the sacred geometry, and there's just like lines and lines of pillars. Like as far as you can see, this mosque is huge. I mean, it's probably maybe like a quarter of a mile square. It's just huge, and there's people going in and out of it all the time, and it just feels like a forest, and it's cool inside. And in Egypt, it's so hot. You go into the mosque, it's like you're in this shaded little stone forest with sacred geometry.
That's beautiful.
And so,
Wow.
I've seen those kind of parallels. For me, nature is like a church, definitely. And for, I think a lot of people, church is nature, like cathedral, light coming through the stained glass. You can see those same colors just after a rain in a forest when the sun comes through the rain or when the sun comes through the fog. You almost see the same colors as on stained glass windows.
Do you ever find yourself just looking at certain places and imagining what it was like 60 years ago, 80 years ago, 150 years ago?
Yeah, definitely.
I did that so much as a kid, and I still do when I go hiking. I see that nowadays you go for a hike and you see the outline of the houses in the distance, and you really it's hard to get away from seeing the encroachment. And I remember going hiking and running into mountain lions and bobcats and and you can still run into coyotes and things like that, but it's like getting less and less. And I liked the fact that it was a little edgy. It was a little bit like you had to just really pay attention and know. I liked that. I found it soothing because it was like an escape from encroachment.
Yeah.
And getting away from that was just really soothing. Even though there was an element of paying attention and there's some danger involved or whatever, it relaxed me to get out.
Yeah.
And I found myself now, and when I go out even more, I struggle to imagine what it was like because there's so much building and there's so much in the way of roads and air traffic and
noise. I mean,
noise. Oh my gosh,
light
so
pollution.
Much noise. Light pollution.
It's hard to see the sky.
Yeah. I mean, we remember growing up here when whole parts of cities weren't even there.
Yeah.
Orange groves.
Open fields,
Yeah.
And, like sometimes, my wife and I lament that. And then you sort of realize like, well, 50 years from now, people are going to be looking back on right now and being like, remember the good old days,
Absolutely.
And that's like a little chilling too,
Yeah. I remember talking to this old fella. He was probably 80, 85, something like that. And he'd been in Orange County pretty much all of his entire life. And he was talking about how you could legally hunt in Aliso Viejo, Aliso Creek, and Crown Valley. It was all hunting area. You just take out his rifle and hunt for food and take out his hunting dogs. And it was like, no problem.
Because Coto de Caza was a hunting reserve.
Okay.
Till they built houses on it. Till the 80s, it was a hunting reserve.
Wow. I didn't know it was that late.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
And they built houses. They started building houses there in like the early 80s. But before that, it was a hunting reserve, and they had like wild boar and moose, and and they had these little sort of human-made like wetlands and ponds that the moose could have their habitat, which is just bizarre to even think of. So many layers.
Remember when we had the wild animal park where
Lion Country Safari.
Lion Country Safari, until some lions broke into the cars or whatever it was, because people were being dumb and trying to feed them from the window.
Never be able to have that nowadays, right?
Yeah, it's
impossible.
It's insane to even think about the possibilities.
Right
of
off the
that today.
freeway, you'd be riding down the freeway and right there.
Yeah, there's a giraffe.
And I actually remember as well driving down the 405 between sort of Culver Jamboree area and seeing foxes jumping up and down next to the freeway in the fields that are now built upon. But I was like, there are freaking foxes there.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I was with my stepdad, and I'm like, did you see that?
Wow.
It's amazing.
So, do you have any interesting, animal stories that might be worth sharing?
Yeah. I was walking barefooted one time at Peters Canyon, which we all know where Peters Canyon
Yeah,
is.
we love Peters Canyon. Yeah.
And I love walking barefoot because you're quiet and you can just feel and tune in, you know? And I walked right up to a bobcat like 5 feet away, like from me to you, from a bobcat that was just sleeping on the ground. And it was in the middle of the day. It was like 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you know? And I just was lucky enough to have approached with the right kind of, you know, like respect and the right kind of, you know, quietness. And then the bobcat, like I sort of stopped and I was, you know, like I kind of gasped very subtly probably because I was like, wow, so cool, you know? And I'm sure the bobcat kind of like felt that and kind of like opened his eyes and kind of looked up and kind of rolled his head back and looked at me and then kind of looked at my feet like, you know, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah. Hey, I'm sleeping over here.
Right. But it was like, you know, and he wasn't aggressive or she wasn't aggressive. And it was just awesome. And then she got up.
That's right. It's a bobcat. It might be a male.
Shook, you know, and then kind of moved off and just walked up a trail.
Wow,
you know?
that's great.
But
That's
that was
right here in our
pretty
own
magical.
backyard.
Yeah. And it was at the
great.
lower part of Peters Canyon where, you know, where the big like flood basin is, where
Yeah.
the houses are. The houses were there. The houses, you know, this was probably 5 years ago. It was like 200 feet from
Wow, that's
Tustin
great.
Ranch housing development, or, you know, 400 feet, I guess, from Tustin Ranch housing development.
I've seen a bobcat in Peters Canyon as well, near where that thing that looks like a bunker
Oh, yeah, yeah.
is.
At the bottom of
back
the
when that used to
dam.
be really grassy and it was right there.
Yeah.
So-
Bobcats are they're pretty awesome because they're
Yeah.
so small.
Yeah.
And but when you see them, you're like, that's not a cat. Like you just, immediately you recognize it as a wild animal, and the way that they look at you is just like so cool because they're just like, they just don't give a shit. You know? They're like, they're looking at you like, what are you looking at? You know?
Yeah.
It's like their whole mannerisms are so great.
Remember years ago, I was in Palomar with my mom, and I was an adolescent, and we were hiking up a trail, and then we heard these kids screaming that there's a mountain lion, and we both looked at each other and thought, bobcat, you know. And so we went out for a little while, and we're on our way back, and we're sort of coming up a hill, so the trail sort of was peaking from both sides, right? And we couldn't see the mountain lion that was coming up on the other side of the hill because it was not a bobcat. And then we just came face to face with this mountain lion, and she looked at us and just crouched down. And I went, oh, mountain lion. And my mom goes, oh my God, right? I said, let's just turn around and walk the other way. So we walked the other way, and we made a lot of noise. I'm like, let's just sort of kick our feet, make a lot of noise, and let her know where we're at. And then we waited about 10 minutes, and we walked back, and I didn't know where she was. We're going on the trail. This is about where she was. Where is she? It was such a scary feeling. And I looked to my left, and there was this fallen tree over a stream, and she was just laying on the fallen tree, just watching us walk by with, you know, a very intense gaze.
Yeah.
And we realized those kids knew what they were talking about.
That's
That was
awesome.
Very humbling
Yeah.
to see a powerful creature like that.
Yeah, the mountain lions are
And there's no
crazy.
bars.
There's nothing between you and the
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
mine.
worked
You
it
know,
out.
what is that trail that's is it Aliso Creek Trail that's down there? There's an area that you can hike in. Maybe there's a robber's cave or thieves cave or something like that, and then there's an area that you're not supposed to go in that has barbed wire. Is that Aliso Creek?
Aliso Woods? maybe?
Aliso Woods, yeah, I
Aliso
think that's what
Woods?
it is. Yeah. Years ago, back when I was working on kind of from reading Tom Brown and just kind of my own thing, I would go off trail and try to go where other people weren't, and I would follow the animal trails as far as I could. So I would kind of follow and just be quiet, really, really quiet, do like barefoot. And I got in a little bit too close to a mountain lion in that case, and I remember going deeper and deeper into the trail, and then suddenly recognizing that I was being tracked. I sensed like a shadow or some kind of movement, and then I heard this thunk, like the body weight of it going from wherever it was to a lower area, maybe jumping off a rock, or I don't know what it was, and the alert in my whole body just sort of lighting up, like, okay, this could be really serious right now. I could be in some serious trouble. So I remember working my way back through the trails, and every once in a while when I would turn a corner, I would kind of catch a glimpse of this blonde cat, you know, and luckily I was close enough to get over the barbed wire quick enough and into the open grass area where I think it didn't want to go.
Right.
But it was an alarming, interesting, and awesome experience. Because, yeah. I had a knife on me, but I don't think that would have been too effective unless I was very precise with it.
Yeah. Because you're like, your food, like you're not the top of the food chain at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I wouldn't have liked your chances
like that
there.
feeling.
Yeah. I weighed much less then.
Yeah. Maybe not so appealing, huh?
Yeah, I was too scrawny.
Wow. So, how do people find your camp and your services? Tell us about that. How could somebody find you and bring their kids?
Our school's called Coast Live Oak School. We named it after our local native oak tree. It's called Coast Live Oak. And they only grow in Southern California and up a little bit up into Central California. So coastliveoak.com is our website. Mostly we do classes for kids, but I do classes for adults too.
Oh, wonderful.
And most of the adult classes I do are one-on-one because adults are at a lot of different levels, you know, and so we try to kind of meet people where they are, and you know, so if you guys are interested in doing hide tanning, I'm very, that's sort of the next like skill that I want to pass on.
Wow,
and that
sounds amazing.
Takes a lot of time, but it's incredibly rewarding because you're making your own clothes basically, and you're using something that is. A lot of hunters will throw the skin away, but if you know how to use it, and you know, then
that would be an amazing experience to actually make your own piece of clothing. I would love to do that. I'm in.
Yeah,
I think we're in.
Me too.
Yeah, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
and it's relatively simple, but it just takes some elbow grease, and you know, and if more people working on it, the easier it is because then you don't have to do it by yourself. So.
Oh, beautiful.
I have a question.
Sure.
For you. What was the situation, or do you have a situation that was a difficult, scary, or serious situation that you had to use your skills and think your way through it, or problem solve that you can share?
I've never, there's been times at night where your sort of fear overwhelms you. I've never really been in an emergency situation.
Wow.
I mean,
that's fortunate.
Partly because I haven't really put myself in that situation. Partly because I've been lucky and just haven't been.
Maybe because you're doing it right.
For me, it's more going to church, going to a sacred place, you know. And for me, I'm primarily a teacher. I mean, I love teaching, and for me, learning the skills, I learned them so that I could pass them on to other people, because I feel like they're skills that are human skills that we need to keep passing, you know. And so for me, spending a lot of time maybe putting myself in dangerous places wasn't really the route that I took, you know. But, you know, I mean, maybe I was in danger and I didn't know, you know. Yeah. But being by yourself at night, I mean, I'm sure you guys have been outside, sleeping on the ground at night.
Yes.
Man, you can trick yourself into thinking all kinds of things or have bad things are happening, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where you sort of face your own fear, and then you wake up in the morning and the sun rises, and the sun is the most beautiful thing because that sun's rising, it's getting warmer, and you're like, I made it through the night.
Yeah, right.
I didn't get eaten, right?
Totally.
Wow, that's great.
Well, gosh, I felt like I learned a lot from this.
Yeah, me too. It's really nice. Yeah,
thanks
really
for
nice.
having me, guys, and it's good to talk.
Yeah, and thanks for keeping that torch lit. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I look forward to authenticity field trip with you, because whatever it is, even if it's doing an overnight somewhere, where we can do some skills training, that'd be really cool.
Awesome. Yeah,
would love that.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Very special thanks to our guest, Mark Hay. If you'd like to connect with Mark and find out more about Coast Live Oak School, go to www.coastliveoak.com. The show is produced by Oliver Altine. Our theme music is composed by Oliver Altine. That's me. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our website, authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening and have an authentic day.